Hey folks, Positive Paul. It is Wednesday evening, January 29th, 2020, of course. Well, I figure I'll slow down from my scorched earth policy and try to do something that, if anything, I hope people find this presentation interesting. And what I want to do is I want to go back to my Winston Churchill diaries. Now, these are the original Winston Churchill diaries that were put into book format. And these ones I actually received from a person I knew up in San Diego. His dad was a Superior Court judge back in the day, Winston's day, and had received these copies straight from London. There's 6 books. This is volume 2, their finest hour. And look, I don't know if that's a lion or a dragon, but I find that pretty interesting. So in this particular volume, Winston has chapter 19 titled The Wizard War. It's funny, it starts on page 337. But, you know, in this chapter, it's a short chapter, but Winston, he describes some of the challenges that they were up against in trying to find ways to detect the enemy, meaning the Germans, before they attacked. And one of the main ways to do that became what we now know is called radar. And it stands for a radio azimuth detection and ranging system. So, you know, they started all this back in 1935. And I'm sure that they had spies in England trying to figure out what the Germans were up to. So I want to just real quick read some parts from this. And here we go. Okay, during the human struggle between the British and German air forces, between pilot and pilot, between anti-aircraft batteries and aircraft, between ruthless bombing and the fortitude of the British people, another conflict was going on step by step, month by month. This was a secret war whose battles were lost or won, unknown to the public, and only with difficulty is it comprehended even now by those outside the small, high scientific circles concerned. No such warfare had ever been waged by mortal men. The terms in which it could be recorded or talked about were unintelligible to ordinary folk. Yet, if we had not mastered its profound meaning and used its mysteries, even while we saw them only in a glimpse, all the efforts, all the prowess of the fighting airmen, all the bravery and sacrifices of the people would have been in vain. Now this is the part that, unless British science had proved superior to German, and unless its strange, sinister resources, let's say that again, and unless its strange, sinister resources had been effectively brought to bear on the struggle for survival, we might well have been defeated, and being defeated, destroyed. A wit wrote 10 years ago, "The leaders of thought have reached the horizons of human reason, but all the wires are down." All right, let's let's just dissect this real quick. So he starts off. It's a secret war. Who no one knows who's losing or winning, and it's unknown to the public. But furthermore, very few people are privy to what's going on. Now, here's the key word: mortal. No such warfare had ever been waged by mortal men. Now, to me, that's Mr. Churchill acknowledging that there are a higher power, a higher authority, a higher dimensional beings, whether you want to call them aliens, fallen angels, Palladians, reptilians. They're not mortal men. So when he says that, you can only take that one way, folks. But he goes on and he says its profound meaning and using its mysteries. So now here's the part that just, when I read this, unless its strange, sinister resources have been effectively brought to bear. Now, what could that mean, folks? Now, certainly, we who knows what was going on in Buckingham Palace. We know about Fledgley Park. And that's where a lot of the, I guess, a lot of the experimentation concerning, radio, radar, all that stuff was done there. But the strange, sinister resources. Now, what's interesting is Aleister Crowley was still alive back then. He actually died in 51, right when these diaries came out. I wonder if he had anything to do with any of this. Now, remember the man from the future, Preston Nichols, the EMI story. Yeah, we'll get back to that someday. Don't worry. So yeah, I mean, they started this up in the mid-30s, trying to figure this stuff out. And without saying it, Mr. Churchill's telling you that they use the occult science. They use witchcraft. And I'd almost put money that Crowley and all those other no-good nicks, whoever they were probably in on it. So, look, clearly, we're history's telling us that very, back then, mostly men. Look, we know there's plenty of smart women in a modern world, and there were smart women back then, too. They just, if anything concerning the whole conundrum of minorities, I look at women suffered the most. And that's not taking away anything from any other minority. It's just that, think about it. With this, during wartime, it wasn't just a bunch of men sitting in a lab, trying to figure out how the heck to develop some device to detect the enemy. They had to go rely upon these strange, sinister resources. And that's where probably women were involved. But, they weren't scientists. They, were, what do you think? So, very interesting. And let's just, I'm going to just brush over some key points to the Wizard War chapter. I thought this would be interesting to slow things down and give you good folk out there in the land that was once called America kind of an idea of, look, they were struggling back then concerning technology. Now, we're 70 years past all that, but look where we're at today. It's amazing how quickly that, and again, they tell us, what do they tell us? That the military-industrial satanic complex is always years and years ahead of the public concerning technology. So he writes, progress in every branch of radar was constant and unceasing during 1939. But even so, the Battle of Britain from July to September 1940 was, as I have described, fought mainly by eye and ear. Wow. So here's some of the ways that they were trying to counter the Germans. Let's see. This top part's really interesting. So for some time, the German bombers had navigated largely by radio beacons. Scores of these were planet-like lighthouses in various parts of the continent, meaning Europe, each with its own call sign, and the Germans, using ordinary directional wireless, could fix their position by the angles from which any two of these transmissions came. Look at that. They were using wireless back then, folks. Okay, so what did the Brits do? To counter this, we soon installed a number of stations which we called beacons. They picked up the German signals and then amplified them and sent them out again from somewhere in England. And this would confuse the Germans and they would lead them astray. Some of them, actually, it says one German bomber landed voluntarily in Devonshire, thinking it was France. So here's what he writes. However, in June, I received a painful shock. Professor Lindemann reported to me that he believed the Germans were preparing a device by means of which they could be able to bomb by day or night, whatever the weather. And it now appears that the Germans had developed a radio beam which, like an invisible searchlight, would guide bombers with considerable precision to their target. The beacon beckoned to the pilot, the beam pointed to the target, and this could all be done whether day, night, bad weather. That's pretty crazy, right? So let's, okay. Let's see, I just real quick, okay. Oh, let's see. Okay, I will now explain in a kind of terms which I personally can understand how the German beam worked and how we twisted it. Like the searchlight beam, the radio beam cannot be made very sharp. Now we're talking about wavelength. Now we know these microwave attacks, all right? Now, microwave range is it's very precise. The wavelength is very small concerning the microwave range, and that's why when these people say they get hit, you see these little tiny red marks on them. That's why it's just like a pencil type beam in that in that part of the electromagnetic spectrum. So look, he says it tends to spread, but if what it is called the split beam method is used, considerable accuracy can be obtained. Let us imagine two searchlight beams parallel to one another, both flickering in such a way that the left-hand beam comes on exactly when the right-hand beam goes out, and vice versa. The attacking aircraft would be exactly in the center between the two beams, and the pilot's course would be continuously illuminated. Now, I think that means illuminated. This is all on the screen. So when they're sitting there in Bletchley Park, right, and this was all up and running, and they had it all wired, they would see this on the screen, and boom, all right, giddy up. Let's get the boys out there, meet these Nazis up in the sky. So yeah, these Winston Churchill diaries are very, very interesting, and like I said, look, they've been taking books off the shelf, and this goes way beyond the targeting, folks. Books, historical books, anything to give anybody an edge up, all right, and get them away from the brainwashing, get them away from the mind control and the malarkey that they're being taught in school. And, what can you do? So if you good folks would like, I tell you what I'll do for you right now. Let's look. Hey, the air show is going all day again today, from sun up to sundown. You think these dumbass reptoids would take a break because they're just giving me a wealth of footage. Let's do this. Let's go right back to the beginning here, and everybody hang on for a second. Okay. Now look, I really feel for you people being gang stalked. You've got the white and the red and the black cars following you, people mobbing you in Walmart, your neighbors being noisy, people messing with you at work. Remember the one story I told a while back is how I worked leasing apartments, and I worked with these young like college girls who didn't care about their job. They were just there while they were going to school. But the one, who knows whether she was demonically driven, just she would hide my stuff, hide my files, and I'd have to go looking for them. And sometimes I'd have to actually, they'd be nowhere to be found. I'd have to do them over again. And, they'd all play stupid, right? The gaslighting. But look at this, folks, all right? I feel sorry for you people out there because, when you get up against this, watch this. This is from today. Here, I'll just start it. Here.
Wednesday, January 29th, 2020.
Okay, this is a direct overhead right at the house. There's the house right there. But watch this, what I'm about to show you. Okay, here we go, folks. Here we go. Now you see when, I could post this on YouTube, right? But you're never going to see that. Now, look, for those of you that don't think the Germans got out of Germany, most of them, well before the war ended, and the story goes they ended up in the Antarctic. I think there's some truth to that. And they're zipping around in these anti-gravity crafts. Well, guess what? Right there is one of those anti-gravity crafts. And that's a hologram. Now, I've been showing this for 3 years now. And it's impossible to see these things on YouTube unless, I guess, someone can download it and then dissect it frame by frame. But look at that, folks. See that? Coming down? And it amazes me that people are being led astray concerning this targeting. And I'll tell you what, let's just keep this rolling. They've definitely, they don't let me sleep. This has been going on for years and years, but in particular, the past couple months. And like I said, I could just walk away now, never make another video. And the stalking and all that, that's not going to slow down for me. They know their time's almost up. But the last time I had a recall dream would have been somewhere towards the end of September. Because since then, it's just been hell. They know right when you go into the REM sleep, that's when they wake you up and get you all discombobulated. And part of that is definitely to break you down, make you tired. So when you're out there trying to, live a normal life, you're probably going to screw up because you're tired. You're not able to think clearly, pay attention, especially when you're driving. Look, one of the classic things when they want to take you out is cause an accident. And they're good at that. And I've survived many of them. But in this recall dream, I'm in an area, I'm in a building with a small group of people, and it's children and women and myself. Now, I'm in Mexico. I left the United States in 2016. And I'm not going to be going back to the United States. Knowing what I know now and seeing the way my family's been treating me, playing stupid, pretending that MK Ultra doesn't even exist. There's no such thing as mind control. None of that. Well, I'm in this building, and wherever we were at, the land features, there were no really land features. It was like a desert area, which makes me think that it could possibly be somewhere in Mexico. And off in the distance, the building is it's fenced off, and I am outside, and all of a sudden I see out of nowhere a helicopter come zipping in, and it's very quiet, totally blacked out. The shape, it's all very sharp right angles, and off in the distance you see two people get out. I immediately go back into the building, go back into the back room where everybody's at, and they're all huddled in the corner. And so I'm standing there, and these two people come in. Now, it was a female and a male. The female was in the lead, and the male was behind her. Now, these two people, we'll just say that for now, 100% sure, are what we know to be the tall Nordic whites. Now, I'm 6 foot. And when that lady walked in, if it was a lady, all right, they're all both dressed in black. They had, a couple of look like square devices on their waist, but there was no like weapons with them, like guns or anything like that. But they had to be, the lady was at least 7 feet, because I was looking up at her, and the male, Nordic white, was probably about the same height, if maybe a couple inches taller. But for some reason, he stayed in the back. Now, she meant business. And she looked around. I stood in between the small group of people and them. She looked around, and then she looked at me. We did a little Mexican standoff, and she didn't say a word. And they both turned around and left. Now, I know for a fact that that's not some implanted dream. And I'm curious about these implanted dreams, the so-called dream modulation. And guess what? Here, I'll give you a clue, folks, when I return to my scorched earth policy. And I'll just give you a heads up. The next YouTube fraud claims that this R&M supercomputer is up everybody's ass. And I'm going to explain to you why it's not. And then expose this numbnuts, whatever his deal is, whatever his disinfo deal is, we're going to put him to rest. But, in the end, I want everybody to just open their hearts to the Lord. Because when this all goes down, there's going to be no one there but Him to help you. Just keep that in mind.